Reading through the Bible in 1 year, August 23rd, 1 Samuel 15, Romans 13, Jeremiah 52, that's the end of that book, and Psalm 31. Then Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you as king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore, listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he set himself against him on the way when he was coming up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and utterly destroy all that he has." This is a callback to what was happening with the Jews as they were coming into the promised land. How God was, as we read yesterday and the day before in Jeremiah, God uses the Jews as his weapon. We especially went over this in detail yesterday, how God will use the Jews as his weapon to destroy everybody whom he desires to destroy. He can do it any other way, but he's chosen to use the Jews for this specific purpose. So now Saul is being raised up again in this same way as they were generations beforehand for a very specific purpose. God wants to punish the Amalekites for how they treated the Jews when they were fleeing, well, not fleeing, but when they were leaving Egypt, when they were wandering around through the land, and that when they went by the land of the Amalekites and asked, "Can we please pass through?" And the people said no and wouldn't let them. So now God is choosing to punish them. So that's why he says, "Now go and strike Amalek and utterly destroy all that he has, and do not spare him, but put to death both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." Then Saul summoned the people and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. Saul came to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the valley. Saul said to the Kenites, "Go, depart, go down from among the Amalekites, so that I do not destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the sons of Israel when they came up from the land of Egypt." So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. There we go. So Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as you go to Shur, which is east of Egypt. He captured Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep, the oxen, the fatlings, the lamb, and all that was good, and were not willing to destroy them utterly, but everything utterly despised and worthless, that they utterly destroyed. So they were told to go in and wipe everything out, but they walked in and said, "Wait a minute, these guys have some really nice stuff. Yeah, I'm okay with killing the people, but, why would I do that when they've got this really nice PlayStation 5 over here, right? I know God said to destroy everything, but certainly he didn't mean this. God must not have known that this was here, right?" So that's what they're doing. They're looking at all the good things and keeping them for themselves. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, "I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned his back from following me and has not carried out my commands." Now, my friends who are what's called an open theist, in that you believe that history was made by the heart and free will of man to do whatever we felt like, right? That God has no idea what happens in the future, that he is not sovereign over anything, especially not salvation, but God's not sovereign over anything. When Hurricane Katrina slammed into New Orleans, God learned about it the same way we did, by watching the news. He's like, "Wow, this is amazing. Why did this thing? I am weeping with you." That's what they would say. Because I've heard them say literally that exact same thing numerous times. That's bad theology. If you've been reading through Scripture with me, you know that God is sovereign in all things. Never does he ask anyone any questions about any of these things. But the note here where he says, "I have regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me. He has not carried out my commands." What he's saying here is not that he has regret in his heart because he did something wrong. God isn't saying, I've made a bad decision here. What he's saying is, this king whom he has chosen is doing exactly what he thought he was going to do. He was going to go after his own ideas, go after his own thoughts, go after his own personal pleasures, whatever they happen to be. He sees that the people are happy not doing that which God has commanded them, and he wants them to have that. Why? Because he's a people pleaser. I've said it for the last 3 days, and I'll say it again. To be a friend of the world is to be at enmity with God. And that's the same thing here. This is exactly what's happening. Saul sees the people that he's now commanding happy, that, hey, we get all these animals and things. He knows the direct command of God that came through Samuel. He knows what he should tell them to do, but he allows them to continue in this sin. Why? Because he's happy that the people are happy. And the people are happy with him because he's letting them do this. But they're sinning. So God is seeing him lead his people, lead God's people into sin by allowing them to continue to do so. If he had been a righteous king and told them, no, you will destroy all of these things, you will destroy all of them because that's what God commanded, then God would be pleased with him for doing so. But he didn't do so. And now God has to punish Saul and the people for violating his command. And Samuel was distressed about this and cried out to the Lord all night. Samuel arose early in the morning to meet Saul. And it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came down to Carmel. And behold, he set up a monument for himself, then turned and proceeded on down to Gilgal. Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed are you of the Lord. I have carried out the command of the Lord. But Saul said, well, what's this? What is this bleating of the sheep I hear in my ears? And lowing of oxen. What is that? And Saul said, well, they had brought them for the Amalekites. For the people spared the best of the sheep and oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God. But the rest we have utterly destroyed. Is that what God asked for? He said, go get the very best of their things. No. Does not God have plenty of animals elsewhere that he could use for his sacrifice? He said to wipe them out. Kill them where they stood. That was the command of God. He doesn't need anything else. And you'll see people do the exact same thing time and time and time again, where when they feel justified, or they find a way to justify their sin by saying, oh, it's okay. God, if you let me win this lottery so that I can buy whatever full thing I want to buy, I can fix all these things. I can pay off my bills, and then I'll have enough money to sock it away in the bank and never have to work again. Newsflash. Work is a gift from God that came to us before the curse of the fall. So there's that. The curse makes work hard. Don't get me wrong. But Adam had plenty of work to do before the fall occurred, before the curse was applied along with that. So work is a good from God. So when you say, Lord, just please let me win this lottery and I will give 10%. No, nay, Lord, I will provide back to you 15% of my lottery winnings of this $170 million I'm hoping to win. You, Lord, will get the very first 15.5%. But I mean, the rest has to go to taxes, you understand. So, and then it'll all be spread out to other things too. And I'll use it for good things as well. It's the same thing. He's using a sinful thing for what? For his own ends. He's saying, well, I'm going to sacrifice them to God. God is not honored in the sacrifice. He gave them a very specific command, and he chose not to do it. Why? Because it made all the people happy. Then Samuel said to Saul, wait, and let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. He said to him, speak. Again, Saul thinks, oh, this has to be good news. God's going to be super happy with what I'm doing because I'm thinking ahead here. Samuel said, "Is it not true, though you were little in your own eyes, you were made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed you king over Israel? And the Lord sent you on a mission." So God put you into this place. He raised you up from being just a lower person in a smaller tribe, right? To put you over all the people. He gave you all of your authority over the people, turned their hearts to follow you and what you said. And he did so. And then he gave you a specific mission. And he said, "Go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are exterminated. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord, but rushed upon the spoil and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord?" Well, then Saul said to Samuel, I did obey the voice of the Lord. I went on the mission which the Lord sent me. I have brought back Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took some of the spoil, the sheep and the oxen, the choicest of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God at Gilgal. They're going to give it all back to God. Samuel said, "Has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. For rebellion is the sin of divination, and insubordination is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you from being king." Then Samuel said to Saul, "I have sinned. I have indeed transgressed the command of the Lord and your words, because I feared the people and listened to their voice. Now, therefore, please pardon my sin and return with me, that I may worship the Lord." But Samuel said to Saul, "No, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel." Now he's worried about what the people are going to think of him, right? And Samuel turned to go, and Saul seized the edge of his robe, and it tore. So Samuel said to him, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and it has been given to your neighbor, who is better than you. Also, the glory of Israel will not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should change his mind." Then he said, "I have sinned, but please honor me now before the elders of my people and before Israel, and go back with me that I may worship the Lord your God." He's saying, look, just let me save face now. So Samuel went back following Saul, and Saul worshiped the Lord. Then Samuel said, "Bring me Agag, the king of the Amalekites," who again was supposed to be slaughtered. And Agag came to him cheerfully, just tripping into the room. And Agag said, "Surely the bitterness of death is past." Should he not have been worried about his people or the slaughter that has come because of them? But Samuel said, "As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women." And Samuel hewed Agag to pieces, chopped him to pieces before the Lord at Gilgal. Then Samuel went to Ramah, but Saul went up to his house at Gibeah of Saul. Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death. That's a good story. We're going to get there. For Samuel grieved over Saul. Samuel didn't want to see him. He felt terrible about what had happened and how he was leading the people of Israel astray. He felt horrible about this, and he didn't even want to see him anymore. And the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. Again, we already read what regretted means in this case, and it's the same thing here. All right. Just as a brief note, starting tomorrow, we're going to go from 16 through basically the end of 31. We're not going to read it all at once. That would just be crazy. But that will be the story of Saul and David. Super great. We're about to reach King David, and it's so, oh, I love it very much. Okay, let's go on to Romans chapter 13. Paul continues. Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Well, then do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. So, I'll restate this again here. The government over you is established by God as a minister from God to you for good. They take care of your needs. They take care of other things. This isn't governmental worship. We've all seen that, and that's just bad, right? But what this is saying is that God is the one who establishes kingdoms. God is the one who establishes nations and their boundaries. And God is the one who sets up kings in their places and even allows their rule. We've seen this happen numerous times with very good kings, which we're about to read shortly here, not right away, but at the end of, as we get further into Samuel, we'll see David take over as king, who wasn't great, don't get me wrong, but he was a far better king than they've had before, and a far better ruler than they've had before outside of God himself, which the people just flatly rejected. But we've also, in this world, seen terrible leaders. Obviously, there's, Stalin, Hitler, all the rest. But we've also seen a lot of compromising leaders. Leaders who come in and promise to do all of these things to help the people of God, or to restore the kingdom, but to restore government back to its original principles, which were really and truly founded on biblical principles. But even when we see that, they still fall apart because of the allure of power. We've only had a couple presidents within my lifetime who at least attempted to do so. But the rest only look for social programs. They're like Saul, where they're looking for pleasing the people, right? Not doing what is right, but pleasing the people, and that they are forcing other people, which lately has been largely Christians, to just endure whatever else is happening, while the rest of the world chastises and really abandons them. So we've seen this happen quite a bit. So we see this here, where Scripture is clearly telling us that we should follow after the government, right? And the end of verse 4 here, but if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it, government, does not bear the sword in vain for nothing. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Now, this works when you look at police, right? If a police officer catches somebody violating the law, maybe shoplifting, whatever, right? Or if it's something much worse, murder that's attached to embezzlement or a bunch of other things, the police's job is to work their way through all of those little cracks until they find out where all of that sin has occurred, and then bring all of those people to justice. Now, there's two different types of justice. There's earthly justice, which we will see here on earth, which is when a murderer is executed, right? Or when someone gets their stuff restored to them after it's been stolen. That is earthly justice. But know this, according to the FBI statistics, less than 50% of murders nationally are closed. What does that mean? It means 50% of people get away with murder. That's national. It means 1 out of every 2 people who kill someone will walk away scot-free in this life. but his true judgment comes in the end, with God, who does not forget, and he will punish them for the deeds that they have done. Now, if they do become Christians, if God chooses to save those people, though they be a murderer, well, then Jesus takes their punishment for them in their place. Even if they're a mass murderer, he will still do the same. However, just know that no one will get away scot-free. Either you will suffer for your punishment in hell for eternity, or Jesus will take it in your place. That's how it works. So, does this mean then that we should just bend over backwards and let the government just run roughshod all over us, and that we should just lay there and endure it? No. There are plenty of times that the government does things that we should not endure. And we've been over this kind of thing before. And it is the right of every Christian to point out the fact that they are violating God's law, not the law of the land, whatever. Remember, slavery was legal. Abortion is currently legal. There is nothing saying that the government is making up all of these perfect laws and that we should just abide by whatever the law says. We need to continue to fight against these legally, right? Not blowing up abortion clinics or the like, but we need to fight against it legally, the right way. And we need to be willing to step up for the right thing and fight back against them. In some cases, being willing to ourselves go to prison for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of the right thing for Christ. And that may well happen here in America. It's currently happening in Afghanistan. It's currently happening in other places around the world. Go to Voice of the Martyrs, go to their website, and they can give you a list of all of the people who have been martyred in the last year or more. There have been more Christians martyred in the last century for the sake of Christ than for all of previous recorded history. Let that sink in. You think things are getting, every day Christ is coming back tomorrow, everything's getting better. Well, yeah, that's true. He could come back tomorrow. But read Revelation. Read what happens to those tribulation saints and how they beg God to come back and to avenge their blood. And he keeps telling them to wait until the time is right. God will endure it for only so long. But until that happens, he will endure it. Because it's not for our glory, but it's for his. So, therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, that's under the government, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience's sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes. For rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Remember also that your rulers, right? Your local authorities, the mayor, the people in your town council, your and even your governor or your president or whoever it happens to be who's over you, they are all under God's control. He's allowing them to do these things. But as we read back in Romans chapter 1, if they continue to sin against him, they are going to be under far more scrutiny because their decisions impact many other people. They stand as an authority put in place by God, and if they choose to use that authority for good, then well and good. But if they choose to use that authority that he gave them to punish those who are doing good, to, as we read at the end of Romans chapter 1, to praise that which is evil, to applaud it, and to promote it wherever they can, they are under a far stricter condemnation because of that. So that's why we should, as far as we are able, follow the law. We should do that which is lawful according to civil authorities to the best of our ability, because it reflects well on Christians as a whole. People know we're Christians, and they will pay attention to what you do. So when they see you cutting people off or flipping them off or cussing out people or, going to a strip club or, getting hammered every night, whatever it happens to be, people see that and they go, oh, that's what their Christ is like? Well, he's just like me, so I don't care. But when they see us keeping the law when no one else will, that's what separates us from that. But we need to be willing to make breaches in those things when we have to serve God first rather than man. And that's the important distinction here to find out. You need to look at these things. Is what the government is telling you to do right now lawful by their standard? Well, yeah, everything is. They can change the law tomorrow and allow whatever it is that they're doing to be suddenly made into law, whether it was lawful before or not. But we need to be willing to look at it and go, is it lawful according to God's law? And if it's not, then absolutely it is our duty before God to refuse to follow those laws. Even though they be under civil law, it is our requirement to do so for the sake of Christ and his anointed and his elect. But continuing this chain of thought, because remember, people will look at this, and I've heard people say, well, Jesus was a rebel, so we should be rebels too. Okay, but what exactly was it that Jesus did with this rebellion that he was doing? Was his command to go in and riot and overthrow the Roman government? No. That's literally what his people wanted him to do. If he had done so, then the ruling class of the Jews would have applauded him everywhere he went. But he was just talking about faith in God and believing what the prophets had said and turning the people back to a true worship of God instead of what the ruling class of the Jews had turned it into. They didn't like that at all. They didn't want that at all. If he had instead come in and started being this great military leader, they would have been the first ones to line up behind him. But that's not what he did, is it? And here Paul's making the point. We should be careful to obey the law so much as it follows God's law, right? Is it unlawful for us to pay taxes? No. Jesus paid taxes. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath from God and from the government, but also for conscience's sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes. For rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due to them. Taxes to whom taxes are due. Custom to whom custom is due. Fear to whom fear. And honor to whom honor. We owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, it is summed up in this saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. We talked about this when we went through Exodus chapter 20. We talked about the giving of the law and the 2 tablets, right? You have 1 through 3 that's dedicated to our worship to God, right? You have the 4th commandment, which is the Sabbath, which is for us, as Jesus clearly stated, where man was not created to worship the Sabbath, but Sabbath was created for man for rest, right? And then you have 5 through 10, which all handle how we treat other people around us. You have the vertical part, 1 through 3, and then you have the horizontal part, which is 5 through 10. And that 5 through 10 covers how we treat other people, which clearly is stated, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If you love yourself in the way that you wouldn't steal from yourself, it offends you when people steal from you, then don't steal from anyone else. That's what's being said. For love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. Do this, knowing the time, that it is already the hour for you to be wakened from sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we believed. The night is almost gone, and the day is near. Therefore, let us lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us behave properly, as in the day, not carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual promiscuity and sensuality, not in strife and jealousy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ. Make no provision for the flesh in regard to its lusts. See the point being made? I mean, it's clear as can be. Our focus is on obedience to God. And if our obedience from God means that we have to follow along with what the government is doing, even though we may not agree with it, if it's not inherently sinful, if it's not causing us to sin against the law of God, then we can do it. But it also depends on what you call, on that which allows you to follow the law of God. All right, let's move on. Jeremiah 52, the fall of Jerusalem. So this has been a long time coming. We kind of talked about it beforehand in little snippets, little things that came through. But this is really the end of this book. We don't even think that Jeremiah is the one who wrote this. The last line from the last one is thus far the words of Jeremiah at the end of 51. But this is just a chronology of the events that took place when Jerusalem actually fell. This is what Jeremiah was stating from the very beginning, saying all of these things were going to take place and that people needed to be warned and people needed to think ahead and do exactly what he was saying, because he was speaking for God to them, telling them, go out to the Chaldeans, go follow them, because it will go poorly for you if you stay here. This is what happened for the people who stayed. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. Not the same Jeremiah. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, like all that Jehoiakim had done. We'll get to him later. It was terrible. For through the anger of the Lord, this came about in Jerusalem and Judah until he, God, cast them out from his presence. And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Now it came about in the 9th year of his reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, camped against it, and built a siege wall all around it. So the city was under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. About a little less than a year and a half, right? On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city that there was no food for the people of the land. Then the city was broken into, and all the men of war fled and went forth from the city by night by way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden, though the Chaldeans were all around the city, and they went by the way of the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho. This is how good of a leader he was. When everything was going bad, he ran away. He left his people to suffer. He left them to die. But they pursued the king, overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. Then they captured the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon at Riblah and the land of Hamath, and he passed sentence on him. The king of Babylon slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and also slaughtered all the princes of Judah in Riblah. Then he blinded the eyes of Zedekiah. Remember the whole eye to eye and face to face, you will see the king of Babylon, right? And the king of Babylon bound him with bronze fetters and brought him to Babylon and put him in prison until the day of his death. Now, on the 10th day of the 5th month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, a king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, who was in the service of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of the Lord, the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, even every large house he burned with fire. So all the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the guard broke down all the walls around Jerusalem. Then Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away into exile some of the poorest of the people. And the rest of the people who were left in the city, the deserters who had deserted to the king of Babylon, and the rest of the artisans. But Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, left some of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and plowmen. Now, the bronze pillars which belonged to the house of the Lord, and the stands in the bronze sea, which were in the house of the Lord, all of these were made by Solomon, right? The Chaldeans broke into pieces and carried all their bronze to Babylon. They also took away the pots, the shovels, the snuffers, the basins, the pans, and all the bronze vessels which were used in temple service. These were holy vessels. The captain of the guard also took away the bowls, the fire pans, the basins, the pots, the lampstands, the pans, and the drink offering bowls, what was fine gold and what was fine silver. The 2 pillars and the 1 sea How did I lose my spot? There we go. And the 12... Seriously, this keeps jumping around. Hold on. There we go, verse 20. So the 2 pillars and the 1 sea, and the 12 bronze bowls that were under the sea, and the stands which King Solomon had made for the house of the Lord, told you, the bronze of all the vessels was beyond weight. As for the pillars, the height of each pillar was 18 cubits, and it was 12 cubits in circumference, with 4 fingers in thickness, and hollow. Now, a capital of bronze was on it, and the height of each capital was 5 cubits, 7.5 feet. With network and pomegranates around the capital, upon the capital all around, all of bronze. And the second pillar was like these, including pomegranates. There were 96 exposed pomegranates, and all the pomegranates numbered 100 on the network all around. Then the captain of the guard took Sariah, the chief priest, and Zephaniah, the second priest, with the 3 officers of the temple. He also took from the city 1 official who was the overseer of the men of war, and 7 of the king's advisors who were found in the city, and the scribe of the commander of the army who mustered the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land who were found in the midst of the city. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them and brought them to the king of Babylon at Riblah. Then the king of Babylon struck them down and put them to death at Riblah in the land of Hamath. So Judah was led away into exile from its land. These are the people whom Nebuchadnezzar carried away into exile. In the 7th year, 3,023 Jews. In the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar, 830 persons from Jerusalem. In the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried into exile 745 people. There were 4,600 persons in all. Now it came about in the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 25th of the month, that Evil Merodach, not evil meaning he's evil, that's his name, king of Babylon, in the first year of his reign, showed favor to Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and brought him out of prison. He didn't have to do this. He had grace on him. He showed him mercy. Then he spoke kindly to him and set his throne above the thrones of the kings who are with him in Babylon. So Jehoiakim changed his prison clothes and had his meals in the king's presence regularly all the days of his life. For his allowance, a regular allowance was given him by the king of Babylon, a daily portion all the days of his life until the day of his death. That is the book of Jeremiah. I love it to death. It's so good. All right, let's go on to Psalm 31. In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be ashamed. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear to me. Rescue me quickly. Be to me a rock of strength, a stronghold to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, you will lead me and guide me. You will pull me out of the net which they have secretly laid for me. You are my strength. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have ransomed me, O Lord, God of truth. I hate those who regard vain idols, but I trust in the Lord. I will rejoice and be glad in your loving kindness, because you have seen my affliction. You have known the troubles of my soul, and you have not given me over to the hand of the enemy. You have set my feet in a large place. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted away from grief, and my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength has failed because of my iniquity, and my body has wasted away. Because of all my adversaries, I have become a reproach, especially to my neighbors, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street flee from me. I am forgotten as a dead man. Out of my mind, I am like a broken vessel. For I have heard the slander of many. Terror is on every side. While they took counsel together against me, they schemed to take away my life. But as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. Make your face to shine upon your servant. Save me in your loving kindness. Let me not be put to shame, O Lord, for I call upon you. Let the wicked be put to shame. Let them be silent in Sheol. Let the lying lips be mute, which speak arrogantly against the righteous, with pride and contempt. How great is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, which you have wrought for those who take refuge in you, before the sons of men. You hide them in the secret place of your presence from the conspiracies of man. You keep them secretly in a shelter from the strife of tongues. Blessed be the Lord, for he has made marvelous his loving kindness to me in a besieged city. As for me, I said in my alarm, am I cut off from before your eyes? Nevertheless, you heard the voice of my supplications when I cried to you. Oh, love the Lord, all you his godly ones. The Lord preserves the faithful and fully recompenses the proud doer. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who hope in the Lord. Behold, the word of the Lord.